One of the great Christian mystics is named Saint Teresa of Avila, also called Saint Teresa of Jesus. Living in the 16th century, a woman who was consumed by the fire of God's love, love of God, and love of neighbor. So here we want to have a look at the life and some of the things written by Saint Teresa of Avila, who is a great mystic and model of contemplation. Living in the 16th century, a great time of turmoil for the history of Christianity, at the time of the Protestant Reformation and the Catholic Counter-Reformation, living in a very Catholic territory, Spain. Teresa of Avila enters the Carmelite order at a young age, around the age of 18 or so. And something she wrote as she began to advance in the spiritual life was, "I die because I do not die." Similar to the sentiment St. Paul shares in his letter to the Philippians, that he realizes to die would be far better, to be united with Christ. But then Paul goes on to say, "But for me to live is Christ, to die is gain." So Teresa of Avila, very interesting life, one of 10 children. Mother dies when she's 15 years old. So it's actually age 20. She joins the Carmelite order. But then later, almost 30 years later, she would found a new reformed religious community called the Discalced Carmelites. And discalced means without shoes. To be without shoes, to be bare feet. It's a symbolic term in reference to the spiritual discipline involved in the Carmelite way of life. She was seeking to go back to the original austerity, what's called spiritual asceticism, or disciplined penitential lifestyle of the rule of the Carmelites, written by Saint Albert of Jerusalem just after the year 1200. So she founds this new religious community. Another saint to be, John of the Cross, joins the community a few years later. And so it's a reformed order for both women and men. And gradually it will be open to lay people and others who would become part of what's called the Third Order of the Discalced Carmelites. And in fact, I myself am a secular Discalced Carmelite, fully professed. So it's a great joy to talk about the founder of my religious community, Saint Teresa of Jesus. And she dies in 1582. So lived a nice, full life of contemplation and gradually administration, and founding many monasteries across Spain. So here's a list of some of the characteristics about Carmelite spirituality, some I've already mentioned, but one term that stands out to me in this list more than any other is humility. The Carmelite is the one who regards humility as the chief virtue, the greatest virtue, humility. To grow in humility day after day after day. And the difficult thing about humility is that we grow in humility to the degree that we experience humiliation. But who likes to experience humiliation? Me neither. But it's precisely how we grow in humility, and it's in giving things up, yielding to the will of God in a constant way. And again, if we're honest with ourselves, to follow Christ means to follow God, who gave himself up over to humiliation, all the way to his arrest, his trial, his suffering, his torture, his being mocked, and being nailed to a cross. And this is God in the flesh, who is Jesus. And so just as Jesus reveals divine humility, so the follower of him is called to grow in this humility without end. Because if you say, I'm finished growing in humility, that's precisely the point. You are not humble. So Teresa of Avila has a lot to say about humility. And I just want to consider just a few of quotes from her works, each so profound in its own way. This first one from her work called Las Moradas in Spanish, or The Interior Castle. She writes, each one of us has a soul, but since we do not prize souls as is deserved by creatures made in the image of God, we do not understand the deep secrets that lie in them. This work is so tremendous. In fact, all her works are so tremendous because they reveal the interior mystery of the human soul. Just as there is this exterior world out there that we can go and travel and take in all of these perceptions through our senses, there's an interior world toward which all these external sense perceptions um, go. And it's this interior world of our being that is called the soul. It's the spiritual core of our being. It's the seat of our personality, of our intellect, of our memory, of our will that acts in and through the body, but is prior to the body in terms of this contemplation. So this contemplation happens in and through the body, but everything goes toward the soul. And just as we can journey out in this exterior world, we can also journey within the hidden recesses or chambers, as she puts them, of the soul, the dwelling places. And what's beautiful and is revealed, especially in Carmelite spirituality, is at the center of the soul is not the self, but an other, namely God. God delights to dwell in us, human beings. We are created to be these spiritual vessels of divine love, circulating in and through us, to the world. This work, if you ever get a chance to read it, I really encourage it. The Interior Castle by Saint Teresa of Avila. She has many other good works too, like her autobiography, uh, also this work called The Way of Perfection, a commentary on the Song of Songs. She writes many poems, letters, and also the Book of Foundations, her experience founding so many monasteries. So this video may be a little longer because it's hard for me to talk so briefly about Carmelite spirituality, which is so dear to my own life in a personal way. A second quote from the Interior Castle, she writes, if we practice love of neighbor with great perfection, we will have done everything. This is what God created us to do. This is how God created us to live, in radical love for one another. A love that is never idle, as she writes, but meant to expand and dilate without end. The circulation of divine love within us, that it either is expanding or contracting, or shrinking. We hope it'll be expanding. If we love our neighbor with great perfection, we will have done everything. And another quote from the Interior Castle, she says, let this in sum be the conclusion, that we strive always to advance. Love is never idle, and a failure to grow would be a very bad sign. A soul that has tried to be the betrothed of God himself, that is now intimate with his majesty, must not go to sleep. Also, a patent characteristic of Carmelite spirituality, the spiritual vigilance. As we read in one of the Psalms, to stay up late into the night meditating on the law of the Lord, seeking the face of God, listening for the voice of God, rejoicing in the privilege to say the name of God. So this is Carmelite spirituality, just tip of the iceberg in the way of some introduction. Thanks so much for sharing in this with me, and I pray for you who are watching.